There are moments in life where a single sentence can change your entire destiny, not because of what was said, but because of who said it, and what that statement reveals about their psyche. You see, we often think danger arrives in loud, obvious ways, but psychological danger, true spiritual threat, often comes softly, quietly, cloaked in normalcy. A casual comment, a sly remark, a joking insult, but within these words may be hidden a fragmented soul, a shadow self crying out not for love, but for control, validation, or vengeance. That is why today I must tell you this. If she says any of these things, you must leave immediately, not out of hate, not out of fear, but out of love for your own becoming. Stay with me, because by the end of this speech, you will understand that recognizing these words may just save your soul from slow death. The first phrase is deceptively common. I don't need a man. On the surface, it sounds like strength, independence, but dig deeper and you'll see this is not strength born from self-awareness, it is resistance born from trauma. A woman who says this with pride or venom has not embraced her independence, she has declared war on the masculine itself. Somewhere in her past, a man failed her, abandoned her, betrayed her, and now all men must pay. You are no longer seen as a partner, you are now a threat to her control, a ghost of past pain. And the danger is this, she may desire you, but she can never respect you, and over time your soul will wither under the weight of her defensiveness. Then comes the next red flag, all men are the same. This is not disappointment, it is psychic projection. She has taken the image of one man and cast it over every other. To her, you are not yourself, you are her ex, her father, every man who ever hurt her, and no matter how kind you are, no matter how loyal, she will eventually accuse you of sins you never committed. Why? Because in the landscape of her unconscious mind, you are not a person, you are a symbol. And when you love someone who sees you as a symbol, you will suffer endlessly trying to prove that you are real. Now pay attention to this one. She says, if you really loved me, you'd. That is not affection. That is manipulation wearing the costume of love. This phrase is a trap, pulling you into emotional blackmail. Suddenly your value as a partner is measured not by your presence, not by your spirit, but by how well you obey her shifting demands. Love becomes a bargaining chip, something to be earned or lost based on performance, and this reveals a soul still locked in childhood, seeking unconditional affection, but using guilt as a weapon to get it. If you stay in this dynamic, you will forget what love even feels like. Then there's the poison cloaked in toughness, you're too emotional, or be a real man. These words cut deeper than any insult. They are a rejection of your wholeness. They deny your right to feel, to struggle, to express pain. She is asking you not to grow, but to harden, and in doing so she invites you to become a hollow shell of masculinity, stoic, numb, unreachable. But masculinity without soul is not strength, it is torment. And if you are punished for showing emotion, you are not in a relationship, you are in a prison for your spirit. Now hear this carefully, you're lucky to have me. Confidence is beautiful, but arrogance is the voice of the devouring feminine. When she sees herself as the prize and you as the lucky beggar, she does not want partnership, she wants power. And slowly, subtly, she will convince you that you are less, that she saved you, that without her you are nothing. This is not love, it is possession. And if you remain, your self-worth will be quietly drained until you no longer recognize yourself in the mirror. Finally, we reach the most dangerous phrase of all, I'll change you. This is the end of your freedom. She does not see you, she sees a project, a blueprint, a broken man who must be improved. And behind that statement is a terrifying belief, you are not good enough as you are. The moment you accept this, your true path, the journey of individuation, of becoming, ends. You will spend your days chasing her approval, reshaping yourself in her image, while the man you were born to be dies in silence. My friend, the words we've explored today are not just red flags, they are psychic markers of unhealed trauma, of spiritual fragmentation. And if you stay with someone who speaks from that place, without doing the deep inner work to change, you will be drawn into their chaos. Their shadow will bind itself to yours. And one day you will wake up not knowing who you are, why you feel lost, and why your spirit has gone numb. So I say this not in anger, but in awareness. If she says these things and means them, leave. Not to shame her, not to punish her, but to protect your path, because the man who chooses to grow must learn when to stay and when to walk away, with his soul still intact. In every relationship, communication is more than just an exchange of words. It is a revelation of the psyche. What a person says, and more importantly how they say it, unveils hidden parts of their unconscious mind. This is particularly true when strong emotions are involved: anger, frustration, jealousy, or even affection. The truth is, we are not always aware of what we are truly communicating. Behind a simple sentence can lie years of unresolved trauma, deeply rooted fear, or a fractured identity. When a woman speaks certain phrases, especially with intensity or conviction, it is not just her conscious mind expressing itself. Her words become a vessel through which her shadow, her repressed emotions, unmet needs, and internal conflicts begins to surface. Carl Jung taught that the shadow is the part of ourselves we do not want to see. It contains all that we repress or deny, our weaknesses, insecurities, wounds, and dark desires. But though we may ignore it consciously, it does not disappear. It emerges indirectly through dreams, behaviors, and yes, through language. A woman might say, "I don't need a man," and believe she is asserting strength, but the deeper reality may be that she fears vulnerability, distrusts intimacy, or resents the idea of relying on someone after being hurt. The phrase becomes a protective shield, born from pain, not power. Her shadow is speaking, even if she doesn't know it. These moments of verbal expression are vital clues. They offer you insight not only into what she believes, but into what she fears, resents, or cannot yet face within herself. That's why paying attention to language is so essential. It becomes the clearest doorway into her inner world. But most people miss these signs. They dismiss them as mood swings, jokes, or just how women talk. In doing so, they ignore the very danger that eventually consumes the relationship. Woman's shadow, when unacknowledged and unhealed, can manifest as manipulation, projection, or emotional volatility, all hidden beneath the surface of ordinary conversation. Her choice of words, her tone, her dismissive remarks, or subtle put-downs are not random. They are symbolic. They are the unconscious mind leaking through the seams. And if you listen carefully, you will hear the warning long before the damage is done. Words are not just tools for communication. They are reflections of the soul. What a woman chooses to say, especially in moments of stress, vulnerability, or power, reveals the inner architecture of her psyche. Language in its rawest form is a mirror, and through it we can see her beliefs, her fears, her values, and even her traumas. Most people assume that when someone speaks, they are simply expressing thoughts, but in reality, language is shaped by unconscious assumptions, by stories built through experience, and by the archetypes working behind the scenes of the mind. When a woman speaks, she does not just share information, she shares herself, whether she realizes it or not. For example, a woman who casually says all men cheat is not describing a universal truth. She is revealing the internal story she holds about men. That story might come from betrayal, from watching her father fail, or from cultural programming that equates masculinity with deceit. To her, this statement may feel like a fact, but to the listening ear of someone trained in psychological awareness, it is much more. It is an X-ray into her unconscious narrative. The language she uses reveals her unresolved pain and the defensive walls she has built. It tells you that she is not starting from a clean slate. She is entering the relationship already guarded, already suspicious, already braced for pain. The same applies to statements like, "real men don't cry," or "if you really loved me, you'd change." These are not just sentences, they are psychic reflections. They show what she believes a man should be, how she views love, and whether she sees you as a person or as a function of her unmet needs. Language never lies. While actions can be delayed or disguised, words tend to slip out from the unconscious. That's why Jung emphasized the need to listen deeply, not only to what is said, but to what is behind what is said. The deeper message often hides beneath tone, timing, and choice of phrase. A psychologically grounded man pays attention to these subtleties, not to judge her, but to discern whether her language is a reflection of wholeness or a projection of fragmentation. Projection is one of the most dangerous and subtle psychological forces in any relationship. It occurs when a person takes the parts of themselves they cannot accept, wounds, fears, insecurities, and unconsciously assigns them to someone else. In romantic dynamics, this is incredibly common and devastating when left unchecked. When a woman has not dealt with her inner emotional wounds, she may begin to project them onto her partner. Suddenly, he is no longer himself. He becomes a container for her pain, a mirror for her unresolved trauma. And once this happens, love becomes distorted, communication becomes a battlefield, and emotional manipulation replaces true connection. Imagine a man being told, "You're just like the rest," when he has done nothing wrong. That isn't about him, it's about her. It's about every betrayal she's ever endured, every disappointment, every time she trusted and was let down. Rather than processing that pain, she throws it onto the person closest to her, hoping unconsciously to regain control by preemptively accusing or punishing him. Rejection becomes a shield, a way to avoid vulnerability by keeping the partner in a defensive position. And through this dynamic, she ensures the cycle of mistrust never ends because she's reacting to a ghost, not the man in front of her. But projection doesn't always come with anger. It can also come with guilt-laced manipulation. Phrases like, "If you really loved me, you would prove it," are emotional traps designed to test loyalty while undermining freedom. She demands acts of devotion not to deepen love but to soothe a fear of abandonment or inadequacy within her. These words may seem simple, even innocent, but they reveal a power struggle hidden beneath the surface. And when love becomes a test rather than a gift, you are no longer in a relationship. You are in a performance designed to protect her from the truth she doesn't want to face, that she doesn't fully trust herself or others. The danger of projection and manipulation is that it can feel like love in the beginning. It comes wrapped in emotional intensity, in passionate words, in dramatic gestures, but over time, it erodes the man's spirit. He is blamed for things he never did, pressured to become someone he's not, and constantly made to prove his worth. What began as romance turns into psychological warfare, and unless he learns to recognize the signs of projection, he may spend years trying to fix a problem that was never his to carry. There is a silent war waged in many relationships, a war not of fists or violence, but of words that cut at the root of a man's being. It begins when she says things like, "Be a real man," or "You're too emotional." These words seem small, even harmless to the untrained ear, but they strike at the foundation of masculinity. They reflect a deep cultural and psychological conditioning where emotion is seen as weakness, and where a man's value is tied not to his humanity, but to his stoicism, his silence, and his ability to suppress. A woman who uses these phrases often does not realize the full weight of what she's doing. She is not merely criticizing a moment, she is attacking his right to feel, to express, to be whole. To call a man too emotional is to demand that he amputate the most sacred parts of himself. It tells him that his sadness is unattractive, his vulnerability is unmanly, and his empathy makes him less desirable. In doing so, it pushes him into a state of fragmentation. He begins to divide himself, to hide what is real in order to preserve what is acceptable. This internal division breeds shame, and shame is the seed of self-destruction. The man will slowly learn that to be loved, he must not be fully seen, and once that belief is internalized, he begins to die, not in body, but in soul. The phrase, "be a real man," is equally insidious. It often comes not as advice but as a dagger. It implies that who he is in that moment is insufficient, weak, or disappointing. She may say it during conflict, during tears, or during vulnerability. But no matter when it comes, the message is the same. He is not enough. What's worse is that many men have heard this all their lives, from society, from absent fathers, from a culture that idolizes strength and punishes softness. When a woman repeats this narrative in the home, the place that should be his refuge, she becomes a channel for the same wounding forces he's spent a lifetime trying to escape. The real danger is not just the words themselves, but what they condition him to become. He may harden, he may withdraw, He may start to believe that numbness is maturity and silence is strength. But this version of manhood is a mask. It hides the truth and creates distance, and in that distance, intimacy dies. Connection fades. Love turns cold, not because he stopped loving her, but because he was never allowed to show himself fully in the first place. When a woman says, "You're lucky to have me," she may smile as she says it. It may even sound playful, flirtatious, or teasing, but beneath those words lies a profound psychological dynamic that often goes unrecognized until it has done real damage. What we're witnessing is not confidence, it is the emergence of what Carl Jung would call the devouring feminine, the archetype of control, domination, and ego disguised as affection. This statement doesn't just express pride, it subtly imposes a hierarchy, placing her above you, while you're relegated to the position of someone who must prove his worth to maintain her presence. In the beginning, it might feel charming. A man might feel proud to be with someone who values herself. But over time, if this pattern persists, something deeper sets in. The man begins to internalize the idea that his value is always dependent on her approval. Her attention becomes a reward, her affection a currency, and her presence a privilege he must constantly earn. And once that belief takes root, he starts living not as a partner, but as a subordinate, forever negotiating his right to be loved. This dynamic is not love, it is psychological enslavement masquerading as romance. What's more dangerous is that this illusion of superiority can lead the woman to inflate her importance in the relationship to such a degree that any disagreement becomes a challenge to her identity. If you question her, set a boundary, or assert yourself, you're not just disagreeing, you're committing treason against the very structure she's built. She must then respond, often with emotional punishment, withdrawal, or coldness, not because of what was said, but because her inflated ego cannot tolerate equality. Love, in its truest form, requires mutuality, but superiority requires submission. And in a relationship ruled by this dynamic, submission is often demanded in silence, through shame, sarcasm, or subtle psychological pressure. This is the archetype that consumes, not physically, but emotionally, spiritually. It wants to be worshipped, not loved. It wants validation, not connection. And if you remain in its presence long enough, you will begin to shrink. Your ambitions, your opinions, your sense of self, slowly they will be edited to suit her comfort. You will avoid conflict not out of peace, but out of fear of disapproval. You will silence your soul in exchange for temporary harmony. And eventually you will forget who you were before you became lucky to have her. When a woman repeatedly declares, "I don't need a man," it is tempting to admire her confidence, her strength, her sense of self-sufficiency. After all, independence is often praised in modern culture. It sounds like freedom, power, and growth. But from a psychological perspective, especially when viewed through the lens of the unconscious, such a statement is rarely about strength alone. It often conceals something far more vulnerable, a deep-rooted fear of intimacy, a rejection of dependency, and an unresolved wound likely born from betrayal, abandonment, or disappointment. The boldness of the claim is not proof of healing, it is often the armor worn to avoid being hurt again. This kind of independence can easily become a wall, a fortress constructed not from wisdom but from wounded pride. When a woman declares she doesn't need a man, she may be speaking from a place of unresolved pain. Pain that taught her to associate closeness with risk, openness with danger. So she removes the need, removes the vulnerability, and removes the possibility of being wounded again. The unconscious strategy is clear: if I don't need you, I can't be disappointed by you. But in doing so, she also removes the possibility of true connection, because real love requires risk. It requires the courage to admit, I need you, not because I am weak, but because I am human. Many men hearing these words will try to prove their worth. They will strive to be needed by her, to show her that not all men disappoint, not all men wound, but this creates a dynamic where love becomes a contest, not a communion. The man becomes an applicant for a role she insists she doesn't even require. The relationship becomes imbalanced. He gives more, tries harder, overextends, while she maintains emotional distance in the name of strength. This kind of union cannot blossom. It remains frozen, locked in a dance where one is always reaching and the other is always retreating. Worse still, when this phrase becomes habitual, it reflects not empowerment but denial. Denial of the basic human longing for connection, support, and shared experience. No one is truly without need. We all carry the need to be seen, to be heard, to be loved. To say otherwise is to lie, not only to others, but to oneself. And a relationship built on denial cannot hold the weight of two real souls. It becomes a performance, not a partnership. What a woman says, especially in moments of emotion, conflict, or control, reveals far more than she may realize. Her words are not just expressions of thought, but windows into her soul, into her inner wounds, her fears, her unresolved trauma, and the shadows she may still be battling. You must learn to listen not with your ears alone, but with discernment, with psychological clarity, because hidden in casual phrases may be the very truth that determines the health or destruction of the relationship you are building. If she speaks with contempt, with superiority, with manipulation masked as affection, or if her words constantly strip you of your worth, understand that this is not just about communication, it is about her internal landscape. And unless she is willing to confront and transform that landscape, her language will remain toxic, not just to you, but to herself. You are not here to fix what she refuses to face. You are not here to be the target of her projections or the sacrifice for her unhealed past. There is power in walking away, not from love, but from illusion. Leave her immediately if her words reveal that she cannot see you as a man, but only as a tool, a threat, or a possession. Leave, not in anger, but in awareness, because what you tolerate shapes what you become. And if you are a man committed to depth, to peace, to truth, then you must honor your own soul enough to say, if your words dishonor who I am, I will not stay and explain myself. I will leave and protect my purpose. And that, gentlemen, is not weakness, it is wisdom.